Hey, everybody. It is Friday, December 13th. Friday the 13th here on the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Mununu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Wishing all of you a safe Friday the 13th, depending on to what extent you believe in it.
Yes, Moshe. Hopefully everybody stays safe, healthy, and survives. Survival, the goal.
I mean, Taylor Swift and others, they like number 13. I mean, some people think number 13 is lucky. Some people, there's literally a phobia related to Friday the 13th. Goes back to Judas allegedly being the 13th guest at the Last Supper. But I'll spare you the historical details because we have a lot of news to get to today.
But before we get to the news, we did want to let everybody know that we are extending our audience feedback survey. It's going to be open until next Tuesday, where we're looking for feedback from you guys on how we're doing.
All things Mo News. If you listen to this podcast, read the newsletter, follow the Instagram account. We want to know what you like, dislike, want more of, want less of. We want to give you all an opportunity to weigh in. Several thousand of you have already given us your feedback. It is extremely helpful as we figure out directionally of where we want to go next here at Mo News. The website is simple. mo.news/feedback. Again, it'll just take a couple minutes over at mo.news/feedback to let us know what you're thinking. Also, premium members, we want to hear from you. People who haven't joined premium, we want to hear from you on what would get you to join, all over at mo.news/feedback.
Okay, let's get to the headlines. President Biden makes history in his last day in office by commuting the sentences of 1,500 Americans. That is a record for one day. Sticking with politics, Donald Trump's pick to lead the FBI makes the rounds on Capitol Hill. Is it looking like Kash Patel will get confirmed? Plus, Time names Donald Trump its Person of the Year as he rings the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Overseas, it's looking like Hamas and Israel are getting closer to a ceasefire and hostage deal. What's changed? To business news, a surprising trend. Gen Z wants to shop in person as much as baby boomers do. And YouTube TV's monthly cost soars yet again.
You thought you were saving those cable prices while streaming prices are catching up.
And it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend, what we are watching, reading, and eating.
And a happy birthday before we get started to Dick Van Dyke, who turns 99 years old today, and Taylor Swift, who turns 35.
Happy birthday, guys. Taylor Swift, we know you're listening.
And there you go with lucky number 13 for Taylor Swift. It's her birthday, December 13th.
All right, President Biden making a couple more headlines before he leaves office in about 5 weeks. On Thursday, he announced that he was commuting the sentences of nearly 1,500 Americans. It was the largest single-day act of clemency in modern history. Back in 2017, then President Barack Obama commuted 330 sentences. Until yesterday, that had been the record. In this case, the 1,500 people who had their sentences commuted by President Biden had actually already been released from prison during the COVID pandemic and had been finishing their sentences on home confinement. If you remember, prisons became hotspots for COVID. Some inmates were released as a way to stop its spread. Biden also pardoned 39 Americans convicted of nonviolent crimes, many of whom have marijuana convictions.
Yeah, among the other folks we're talking about here includes a county commissioner who was convicted for taking $500,000 worth of bribes, a tax attorney who was wrapped up in the biggest tax fraud prosecution ever, the owner of a Detroit area Medicare billing company who orchestrated a $26 million fraud. A lot of these folks got decades in prison. So Biden here commuting the sentences, saying that, quote, my administration will continue reviewing clemency petitions to advance equal justice under the law, promote public safety, support rehabilitation and reentry, and provide meaningful second chances to people. A reminder here, there is a difference between pardons and commutations. Commutations, like the ones we just described above, are when the guilty verdict is kept on your record, but the punishment is reduced or eliminated, the amount of prison time that you got. Whereas pardons are wiping the conviction out altogether, restoring full rights, clearing the individual's record. Now, we should expect more of this in Biden's closing weeks in office here. He has about just under 40 days now left in his presidency. Among the things they've been debating, blanket pardons for individuals who are considered Trump's enemies, preventing them from being prosecuted. We mentioned that among the people they were thinking about were like Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, Anthony Fauci. Unclear whether they will get any blanket pardon. Still, the Trump administration has said they plan to prosecute folks without specifics. They want to investigate them. And so the thought from the Biden White House is, let's prevent you guys the headache and the legal expenses from having to go through that. Now, we are getting data, Jill, on the Hunter Biden pardon. Americans were asked about it, and only 1 in 5, 22% of American adults approve of Biden pardoning his son. So pretty controversial there. There's not many things that 80% of Americans agree on, but it appears 80% of Americans disagree with the Hunter pardon.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of pardons, Donald Trump has vowed again this week to pardon a number of the January 6th rioters on his first day in office. Already more than 1,000 Americans have been convicted in the attack on the Capitol. Trump said that he would go case by case, saying, quote, if they were nonviolent, I think they've been greatly punished. I'm going to look if there's some that were really out of control, but a vast majority of them should not be in jail. In
an interview that was published yesterday in Time magazine, Trump said that his pardons will start in the first hour, then corrected himself and said, maybe the first 9 minutes. In the first 9 minutes, I will pardon some of the folks associated with January 6th. As you said, more than 1,000, Jill, I think it's actually more than 1,500 folks have been charged in connection with the Capitol at this juncture. The conduct ranges, though, between trespassing misdemeanors to assaulting police officers. And so Trump has been vague about how many of those and which offenses they committed that would lead to a pardon.
The first 9 minutes. That's very specific.
It's very specific. He'll be back in the office.
Ready, go.
First hour. How about first 9 minutes? He has a lot on his agenda, Jill. January 20th and 21st. Be prepared for a lot of incoming news.
Sticking with politics, President-elect Trump's pick to lead the FBI, Kash Patel, made the rounds on Capitol Hill this week, and it appears that he is on his way to confirmation. The GOP senators are giving him universal praise, even some who had raised a lot of concerns about some of Trump's other picks. And despite the fact that Patel has called the leadership of the FBI a threat to the people and has published a list of enemies, he has vowed retribution for investigations of top Republicans. Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who is considered a moderate, said, quote, Kash Patel is the real deal. President Trump campaigned on the promise to enforce our laws equally and fairly and restore the integrity of the FBI, which sounds like he's a yes vote.
Well, interestingly, Tom Tillis, despite being a moderate, is up for re-election, Jill, in 2026 in North Carolina. And the folks around Trump have made a point of threatening any Republican in the Senate who votes against a Trump nominee, that they're going to primary them, that they're going to run somebody against them who's more of a loyalist to Trump. So that's been the message sent to Tom Tillis and a number of other Republicans on Capitol Hill, which may be one of the reasons you're seeing the kind of circling of the wagons of sorts around Kash Patel, some of the other controversial picks like Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth over at the defense secretary position. Now, it also goes to show where the Republican Party is these days, sort of flipped on the FBI. They were once very loyal, very defending of the FBI. These days, very critical of the FBI, feeling the FBI has unfairly gone after conservatives and Republicans. And it's interesting because Kash Patel is not somebody that Republicans would have tolerated 4 years ago. In fact, they didn't tolerate him. He wasn't really viewed as Senate confirmable at that juncture. Now, as of this recording late on Thursday, he has already met with 17 Republican senators. He needs 50 of them to vote for him to get through, but he hasn't met with some of the more pivotal ones who could be difficult. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, Mitch McConnell has been a critic of his. And remember that any nominee that goes through the Senate can only stand to lose 3 Republican senators. Once they hit a 4th, that means that Democrats will be able to win that vote. So he needs to ensure that he loses no more than 3 of them. We shall see. But given that Christopher Wray, the current FBI director, made a point of resigning, we told you about that on yesterday's podcast, it appears here that at least at this juncture, on this December 13th, like Kash Patel, directionally is in a slightly better place.
All right, time for the speed read. Moshe, it is official from Time. The magazine has named Donald Trump its Person of the Year for 2024. The publication announced its selection Thursday. It is Trump's second time after being first elected in 2016. Taylor Swift, who's getting a lot of play in this podcast, was last year's Person of the Year. Times editor-in-chief Sam Jacobs wrote that it was not a difficult choice this year. He said that, quote, since he began running for president in 2015, perhaps no single individual has played a larger role in changing the course of politics and history than Trump. On the cusp of his second presidency, all of us, from his most fanatical supporters to his most fervent critics, are living in the age of Trump. And with that announcement, Trump rang the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange about 2 hours after the Trump announcement, an event to celebrate the honor. Trump was with his wife, Melania, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, and several of his picks for cabinet posts. And he told everyone that he appreciated being selected by Time, and then started to talk about the economy. And he continued to promise to lower taxes and restore manufacturing in the United States. And he also promised to lower inflation.
So Trump is one of 14 U.S. presidents that have been recognized by Time magazine, including Joe Biden, who got the cover several years ago. Bill Clinton, W, and Obama all got it twice. Now Trump joins that club of getting it twice. FDR, the only president to get the cover of Time magazine 3 times. A goal there for Trump. This has always been a big deal to him. In fact, back in the day, before he ever made the cover of Time magazine, he actually had a fake version of him being named Person of the Year that he hung at some of his golf clubs. Nonetheless, Time magazine says he has earned it with the greatest political comeback in modern American history. And Trump said in an interview with Time, I think I like it better this time, being on the cover this time versus last time. We did a good job. And he feels that the media is giving him more fair treatment this go around, at least so far in the first few weeks of his transition period.
Now to the Middle East and possibly some movement on a hostage and ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. From the Wall Street Journal, Hamas has apparently yielded to 2 of Israel's key demands for a ceasefire deal in Gaza, which is raising the hopes of an agreement that could release some hostages within days, despite repeated collapse of previous negotiations. So we do want to say we hesitate to report on this because we've been here before. But this time, Moshe, it does appear that both sides have actually made progress and that they are, at least according to reports, pretty close to a deal. Hamas telling mediators for the first time that it would allow Israeli forces to remain in Gaza temporarily when the fighting stops. And they also handed over a list of hostages, including U.S. citizens, whom it would release under a ceasefire pact. That is something that hasn't happened, the specific names, since the first truce last year in November. The new plan was proposed by Cairo. It's backed by the United States, and they're looking to build on momentum generated by the ceasefire in Lebanon that was secured in November, which has broadly held despite both Israel and Hezbollah accusing each other of violations.
Yeah, and the thing for Hamas is they got nobody backing them up at this point. Hezbollah signed the deal. Hamas is depleted. Their leadership has been basically eliminated by the Israelis. Iran doesn't want in anymore. So they're pretty isolated, damaged, and realize that their back is against the wall. As far as the hostages, there are still believed to be just over 100 hostages being held in Gaza. Israeli and U.S. intelligence believe about half of them are still alive. That includes 7 Americans. And all of this comes, as we told you last week, Trump posted on Truth Social, that there will be, quote, hell to pay if the hostages are not released before he assumes office on January 20th. So adding to potential pressure there for Hamas. So as part of this latest proposal, Israel and Hamas are considering a 60-day ceasefire that would see the release of 30 hostages being held in Gaza, including the U.S. citizens. In exchange, the Israelis would set free a certain number of Palestinian prisoners. Typically, Hamas demands 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1 for every Israeli that they release. And the Israelis have committed to allowing even greater humanitarian flow into Gaza. Negotiations have picked up here. The Americans believe Netanyahu is on board here. He also is getting the pressure messages from Trump. He's spoken to Trump a number of times here. Everyone's already looked past Joe Biden at this point. And so it is significant that Hamas is willing here to allow the Israelis to hold territory inside Gaza. That was a non-starter for Hamas for a long time. They realized that They don't really have any leverage right now. And so they're willing to allow the Israelis to basically keep certain corridors within Gaza, including control of the Gaza-Egypt border.
And now to a trending business story from CNBC. Here's something about Gen Z that could be surprising. The tech-savvy teens and 20-somethings of this generation shop in stores more than millennials and Gen X, and about as much as their baby boomer grandparents.
Brick and mortar is back, baby.
That's right. This is according to a survey by the International Council of Shopping Centers. So Gen Z plans to shop more in stores than online this holiday season. Nearly 63% of Gen Z respondents in the survey said they plan to make holiday purchases at typical stores. Only about 50% said that they would make a purchase on retailers' websites and apps during the season. That's actually lower than any generation besides baby boomers. Those up-and-coming spenders have become a critical market for malls as department store anchors struggle to survive and older shoppers rely more on e-commerce. So malls apparently making major upgrades to draw these young people in.
So Gen Z discovering what we millennials loved, and I guess the Gen Xers loved it via Fast Times at Ridgemont, as depicted in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Mallrats, Clueless. The mall, Jill, is hip again.
I mean, that's what I used to do on my weekends when I was in high school. We'd walk around the mall.
Walk into Abercrombie, the whole thing. And apparently the mall owners are taking advantage of this. Simon Property Group, the country's biggest mall owner, has launched a marketing campaign titled Meet Me at the Mall. Brookfield Properties, which also owns a number of malls, has turned mini golfing, new food court offerings, new fashion brands to try to bring young people into the malls. Abercrombie & Fitch is throwing pop-up concerts and autograph signings. There's rock climbing walls. Bath & Body Works apparently adding scent bars and video content to cater to Gen Z. So all of this is happening. One researcher says that despite growing up in a world where everything from schoolwork to dating takes place on the internet, almost every Gen Z person that they survey found that they prefer to communicate in person. And also Gen Z is looking for instant gratification. The fact that you can go to the mall, you see the item, you try the item on, you take it home with you. There's something to that as opposed to clicking buy and then hoping it comes in the mail within a few days. Humans are social animals, Jill, at the end of the day.
Moshe, I am fully on board with this trend, and hopefully they could do a round or two getting the samples at the food court. I don't know if you did that. That was my move.
Listen, I for a while I was really into the Panda Express, right? There was Panda Express, there was Sparrow. I mean, I haven't checked out the food court offerings of late, but I will say this: we will be in Aventura in the Miami area between Christmas and New Year's. And I always found it fascinating down there, like the mall culture, at least in some of the malls I've been to in Florida, much more robust in Florida, or at least in South Florida, as I've seen, than in some other parts of the country. So I know I will be at the mall at least once when over the course of the next few weeks.
So I'm going to do an overgeneralization based on 2 malls that I've been to in Florida. But my hunch is that the reason that malls are so popular in Florida is because they have really, really good restaurants. It's almost like the restaurants are their anchor stores, because when we would go out to eat, a lot of times we were just like, go to the mall. And they had great restaurants.
Listen, with all due respect to Sparrow and Panda Express, sometimes you gotta take it up a level at a mall.
And finally, from Variety, YouTube TV is getting more expensive, outpacing the rate of inflation with a 14% price increase for the streaming pay TV package. It goes into effect for new customers immediately. So that means the cost of a new YouTube TV base plan subscription goes up from $72.99 to $82.99 starting immediately again for new users.
Yeah, so YouTube TV, if you don't have it, we have it in our house. They have 100 channels from broadcast cable, regional sports networks, DVR with unlimited storage. You can get 6 accounts. But what's notable is it actually started off pretty cheap. Back when it launched, it was just $35 a month. So pretty significant. It's gone from $35 now to $83 in just a matter of a few years here. This new price will go into effect January 13th for most existing users. And YouTube is explaining it this way. It's due to the rising cost of content. They got to pay more for the content. So you, the consumer, needs to pay more here. And so, Jill, are you a YouTube TV person?
I have had YouTube TV in my life. I don't currently have it, but I'm a fan. I like the whole interface.
And so YouTube TV is hoping that people's fandoms will mean that they don't have much churn as they increase the price here.
The problem is you still have to pay for internet. So it's like You've got the internet on top of the YouTube TV.
Which if the YouTube TV now at $80+ plus the internet, now you're back to paying, $130, $140, $150 a month.
All right, it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend. Time for what we are watching, reading, and eating. Moshe, what are you watching this weekend?
Elton John, baby. There's a new doc premiering over on Disney Plus today. Elton John, Never Too Late. And I'm a big fan of his story, the music, etc. So should be a good watch. What are you watching?
So I just started watching the Outlander series on Netflix. Moshe, I am obsessed. It's a historical drama series. It's based on the Outlander novel series, and I cannot stop watching. It feels like a mix of Downton Abbey and Game of Thrones, which are two of my favorite shows.
What's the backdrop?
To begin with, Scotland in the 1700s.
Oh, look at that.
I'm a huge fan of historical fiction because you learn a lot about the time period. And for me, like you obviously like to read all of these books. For me, historical fiction series is a very easy way to get it.
I'm into it as well. I may join you over on Netflix watching Outlander. Jill, what are you reading?
Moshe, dare I say, I'm actually going to pick up Oprah's latest book club selection. It's called Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. And it's just 128 pages. And it's supposed to be really good. It's a holiday story. So I'm going for it. And by the way, I am looking for book recommendations. I'm going to post on my Instagram a question if anybody has ideas. I'm at Jill R. Wagner. I'll be posting a question because I'm about to go to Florida for a couple weeks. So send over the book ideas.
128 pages, very manageable.
That's one sit. I mean, you could knock that out in a sitting if your kids will leave you alone. Moshe, what are you reading?
So just finished Permission to Feel by Mark Brackett. He's the guy over at Yale who runs their Emotional Intelligence Center that we did our survey with, asking people about their emotions about the election going into the election and then coming out of the election, the various feelings people were having. But it's a larger conversation in the book about the impact your emotions have on your well-being, on your success. On the ability to manage and understand your emotions and its impact on your health, your proclivity to heart attacks, cancer, etc. And, some people grow up in certain scenarios where they're not really allowed to showcase their emotions. And he says that, they end up coming out no matter whether you want them to come out or not. And so just had a fascinating conversation with him. That's out today on the Mo News Interview podcast. So the book is Permission to Feel. It's actually available on Amazon Audible, the aforementioned Amazon Audible. But in addition to that, take a listen to our Mo News Interview podcast about all things emotions. And one of the things we get into, since so many of you in the audience are parents like us, is how to understand your child's emotions, how to help them along, also while not taking over their lives.
Okay, Moshe, our favorite part of this. What are you eating this weekend?
So, Jill, someone in the Mo News audience sent me macadamia nut ice cream from Bern's Steakhouse via Goldbelly. So thank you, number one. Number two, Bern's Steakhouse apparently based out of Florida, and you can get their famous ice cream. And those of you who listen long enough know I'm a big fan. But I will say this, as somebody who has very high standards for ice cream, their macadamia nut ice cream from Bern's Steakhouse, BERN, is the real deal. Had it last night, and I couldn't stop.
Moshe eating ice cream. It's not the biggest shocker, but I like this. I like the new flavor. It's
a new flavor from Florida via Goldbelly. I'm in. It was something different. Jill, what do you got cooking this weekend?
Well, as you could probably tell from listening to this podcast, I'm very congested and stuffy.
Jill's been a warrior this week, everybody. She's been fighting something and still showing up every day to do the pod.
Moshe with a smile on my face. But I...
with bells on, as they say. Yes.
So I have been having a lot of Ben's chicken noodle soup, as we say, Jewish penicillin, and it's helping. But I think I might need a real antibiotic.
Who's Ben? Who's Ben?
Oh, it's a kosher deli here on Long Island.
Okay, there you go.
I thought
my friend Ben made me some chicken noodle soup. Like, who's Ben's chicken noodle soup?
I'm totally delirious. You're like, who's Ben? My uncle. No,
Your Uncle Ben? Do you have an Uncle Ben? You don't have an Uncle
Ben. I don't. But my Uncle John is a very good cook. But no, this is
John.
place.
Does John listen to the podcast?
I don't think so.
Oh. John, where's your chicken noodle soup? Your niece needs some.
He would make it if I asked, actually.
Would it be, but do we like John's cooking?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Great.
All
right, Moshe. Let's wrap before this goes any more off the rails here.
Get this message to John immediately.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store. And stay safe on this Friday the 13th.
Don't walk under any ladders. Throw salt over your shoulder. Whatever. Anyway, everybody, Jill, feel better. See you guys on Monday.
Bye, everyone.